Hi, my name is Iain Miskimmin, and today I want to take you through a quick presentation on the current industry thinking supported by the government's BIM initiative. There are lots of words out there associated with BIM, and most of us, including me, can struggle to know where they all fit in and how they relate to each other. So I will now attempt to join a few of the dots and colour in some of the boxes. So we're going to start with the government construction strategy. Before we do, can anyone tell me what happened in 2008-2009? There were a few financial troubles for the UK PLC, and the government needed to look at how they could run their assets more efficiently. One report, called the Plan for Growth, highlighted the critical importance of an efficient construction industry, because this industry represents 7% of the GDP of the country, and about 40% of that comes from government-funded projects. So on the 31st of May 2011, the Cabinet Office published the Government Construction Strategy, along with other measures aimed at saving 20% of the costs of building and owning an asset. They're going to require all projects to use 3D BIM, with all project, asset information, documentation and data being electronic by 2016. Basically what is known as Level 2 BIM. The industry, which is fragmented, conservative and some may say aggressively contractual, needed guidance and assistance in getting to grips with this new direction. They set up the BIM Task Group to help define the building blocks, add guidance and governance. If you haven't visited the website yet, I really encourage you to do so. The labs area is the most important part. You have to register, but it's free, and most of the information I was talking about can be found here. One of the most important documents that can be found in the labs area is the Digital Plan of Works. This provides the backbone, structure, foundations, whatever you want to call it, of BIM, clearly setting out both the concepts and detail of management of built asset data derived from the process of building and managing building information models. This document also tells us about the stages throughout the life cycle of a project where information needs to be created, confirmed and delivered. We'll look at this diagram again later in the presentation, but in simplistic terms, thanks to Andrew Woolston-Home for this diagram, the 20% requested savings made with better information may not seem realistic during the design and construction phases, but when we start to operate the asset, this makes a considerable impact on the business outcomes. Here's an example. If I told you that one of the bulbs in your living room needed replacing, what questions do you need to answer before you can do that? Things like which bulb, what's its rating, where do I go for the replacement, and even further down the line of, oh look, if I buy 10 I can get them for half price. Will the others also need replacing soon as well? Not to mention the time it took to get home, get the ladder, unscrew the shade, get the bulb out, etc. etc. So what do we define as an asset? Well, an asset is a physical thing that delivers services or supporting services. For example, a structure, paved area, lighting. The structure asset example is also made up of multiple assets forming a functional group. We record assets down to the level we would expect to maintain them. For example, a stair, not the individual steps and landings, a window, not the frame, glass or locking mechanisms, a pump, and not the pump motor bearing. To help us put a structure to our assets, we need to look at them in this way. At the top of the tree is a complex, a network, if you will, of our assets. This could be a rail network, a power grid, waterways, whatever. This complex is made up of multiple facilities. In highway terms, they are roads and hubs that join them. In rail, it could be the lines and the stations between them. So similar with water and power. The facility has multiple entities along it that carry out functions, such as taking the facility over a river, providing lighting or drainage. Those entities are made up of elements, which are the lowest level of a maintainable asset. So in this example, we have a safety barrier element of a bridge entity, which is carrying out a function along the M25, which is part of the Highways Agency's complex. Simple. Each of those entities and elements have a tag. This tag is made up of 3 pieces of information that help us identify it. Firstly, the location. Where is it? Let's say it's on the M25. Classification. Let's say this is part of the paved area entity. Function, and its surface course element of that entity. Then we add a unique ID to this specific instance of the asset. Don't worry, the idea isn't to label every asset, but when it's modelled, it will need to have a tag to associate it with an asset register. Most organisations have had great documented methodologies for moving information through a workflow and establishing a consistent quality of information throughout the life cycle of an asset. That's great if you're a sole contractor on a building, but infrastructure is slightly different, requiring collaboration between many different organisations to produce the asset. Due to the fragmented nature of our industry, it has been decided to lay out a standard that defined a common methodology for managing the production, distribution and quality of construction information, including that generated by CAD systems, using a disciplined process for collaboration and a specific naming policy. This standard, called BS 1192-2007, delivered us a baseline to start aligning our organisations. When the BIM Task Group was set up, it was recognised that BS 1192-2007 was a great place to start, and this was enhanced to set down the requirements for achieving what is known as Level 2 BIM in 2013 by the release of PAS 1192 Part 2. This is going to be further augmented by PAS 1192 Part 3, which looks at the operational phase of an asset, and PAS 1192 Part 4, delivering the methodology of delivering the client information requirements through Cobie. Cobie. What happens if you type Cobie into Google? You get a lovely young lady called Cobie Smulders. However, that's not what we're here for. Cobie stands for Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. Unlike the BIM acronym, it suffers from having the word building in the title and is currently not fit for infrastructure with an inability to handle linear assets. However, the government has mandated that to achieve Level 2 BIM, you need to both receive and deliver information in Cobie format. It scares most people who see it as an overly complicated spreadsheet of mind-boggling proportions. However, you need to think of it simply as a suitcase that delivers information from one place to another, be that a system, company or project. Love it or hate it, it is a requirement that all information is transferred in this manner. Another of the requirements is for a standard system of classification, so that we are calling all assets the same thing and are able to structure our data in a common way. The standard here is Uniclass, approved and supported by all these organisations, but currently suffers from a few shortfalls. Uniclass 1 was not fit for infrastructure and was very limited. Crossrail adopted this and expanded it to suit light rail and underground services. Uniclass 2 went some way to dealing with the larger classification of assets and ensuring it will work for buildings delivering BIM Level 2. Uniclass for infrastructure is a current task group that is defining the classification systems suitable for all infrastructure. I encourage you to get involved. To ensure every asset has the correct information, measured in the correct way, Crossrail created an Asset Definition Dictionary, and in this was an AD4, an Asset Data Dictionary Definition document, AD4 for short, for each asset at element, entity and facility level. These are also being replicated for HS2, Thames Tideway and other major infrastructure projects. These delivered attribute information for operations and maintenance only. IAD4 UK is an initiative looking at creating a common dictionary across all infrastructure so that whoever you are delivering an asset to, be it road, rail, power, water, you'll always deliver the same information in the same format. It will also deliver the required information for the briefing, design, construction, operations, data drops. So what about those data drops? Well, before we describe them, you need to understand employers' requirements. In simple terms, these are the answers to plain language questions that the client asks at the end of each stage of a project. These will help them make informed decisions about options, assure them the contractor has understood the briefing and is going to build it correctly, and they know everything they need to know about their new asset. It's like buying a car. The manual tells you all you need to know about running it. Without that manual, how do you know what pressure to inflate the tyres, what type of oil you need, and what button does what? In these diagrams, they are usually depicted as a red diamond. You remember this diagram. It represents the life cycle of an asset from cradle to grave. Throughout that life cycle, the employer will need information to answer his questions. These are represented by the green footballs. This information comes in 7 data drops: strategy, brief, concept, design, build and commission, handover and closeout, operations, which include things like maintenance and the end of life. So how do all these fit together? Okay, so we have the employer's requirements, the plain language questions represented by those red diamonds. Then we have the data drops, which are the answers to those questions. Cobie is the suitcase that transports those answers. Uniclass classifies the answers. The AD4s provide the details. The digital plan of works describes the whole process. BS 1192/2007 established the methodology for managing the production, distribution, and quality of construction information, including that generated by CAD systems using a disciplined process for collaboration and a specific naming policy. PAS 1192 Part 2 specified the requirements for achieving building information modelling level 2. PAS 1192 Part 3 focuses on the operational phase of assets, irrespective of whether these were commissioned through direct capital works, acquired through transfer of ownership, or already existing in the asset portfolio. And PAS 1192 Part 4 defines the collaborative production of architectural, engineering, construction information, client information requirements through Cobie. Only about 20% of that information is CAD, but it delivers an impact on those client plain language questions that is proportionally larger than that. As they say, a picture paints 1,000 words. We start off with the briefing and concept phases, delivering basic 2D and 3D models, moving through to the detailed design phase, where we should be modelling in 3D and extracting our drawings directly from it. During the construction and commissioning phases, we look at 4D over time and 5D over cost. Then when we hand over our information back to the client for operations and maintenance, we need something different again with 6D. Each of these models has a different purpose and a different level of detail. But how we actually define that level of detail and what information is generated when we model at these stages isn't yet clear. So after all that, do you know what BIM means? Well, it'll mean different things to different people. But what you have to realise this: every part of the supply chain has a different piece of the information puzzle that goes together to answer the client's requirements. Each piece, no matter how small, is important because without it, the puzzle is incomplete. Thanks for listening, and I can only encourage you to get involved in the above initiatives and start to map out a future beyond 2016.